Hello, YouTube. Or good afternoon. Anyway, so I'm gonna talk about Queen Sugar. Okay, Queen Sugar is season one, of course, episode 6. Okay, so this scene, first of all, I don't know whether it was on demand's fault or own's fault, but it's not on demand yet, and I like to watch the show to enjoy it the first night, and then in the morning I can watch the show again to make sure I get the details right before I try to spit it out to you guys. Anyway, so I only saw it one time. For some reason, they're not down. Usually, it's up the next day. Okay, so this episode starts off with Nova in the radio station discussing her story about these corrupt cops and this corrupt system in dealing with black men and sending them to prison, cashing in on them being arrested and given long periods of time. Okay, so she's trying to talk about the story. There's another advocate there, like a Black Lives Matter type personality there to discuss the story with her, and then of course the disc jockey. She keeps trying to talk about the story, but the uh, the disc jockey or the interviewer it keeps trying to move the story over to her sister and her the scandal involving her sister Charlie and her marriage to Davis. She don't want to go there. She says it several times. Then they started taking call-ins. People to ask questions. Well, you guessed it. The call-ins want to know about Davis and Charlie and this scandal about him raping this girl, being accused of rape. At any rate, so there's at one point they kind of catch her off guard or something, and she says something about people's tendency to blame the victim, which would be the girl who got raped. And so that's going to play into to a scene that I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes here. But okay, so girl between there's energy. Last week we learned that at some point Noah had a relationship with a woman during the college years. So we knew that there was always generally if they drop something like that, there's going to be more story added to that. They're not going to just drop that and leave it. So there's energy between. Remember now, last week Nova broke up with her white cop boyfriend, basically because of the same story, the controversy around the story and position to put him in has been a conflict of interest because he got her in seats just to interview this kid who is a big part of the story. Anyway, they broke up. She asked for her keys back. Now, this other woman, it's another black lady, there's energy between them. I'll just leave it at energy for the moment. So they're flirting with each other to the point where uh, Nova admires a piece of jewelry the girl has around her neck, and I guess they're both kind of spiritual type people. But they attach a lot of meaning to pieces of jewelry and so forth. And the girl takes the necklace off and gives it to Nova. Nova said, "I can't accept that. Consider it a loan, and I will get it back from you." So there's lots of sexuality in that scene. But anyway, so that's in the air now. This Black Lives Matter girl is flirting with her. I believe that there are lesbian women involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. I think some in the beginning of that movement. So just like with Empire, this show also tries to tie in current events into their story. So there are going to be a lot of parallels between what's going on in the news and what's going on the show. Okay, in another scene, Toot Sweet, which is the kid, I guess is he 15, 16, something like that. He's in an adult prison. He's been beat up, jumped on in jail, sent to the hospital. Anyway, he's talking to her from jail, and he's very afraid because apparently when he was jumped on, the cops were right there while he got jumped on. So there's a good chance that he got jumped on because of cooperating with this woman. I mean, it's not been made clear yet. But for some reason, the cops allowed him to be beat up, and so he's very nervous. He's very afraid, and he wants her to get him out of there, and asking her what the progress is. Apparently, he doesn't even have a public defender at this point, and this is all over. The kid had a single joint of marijuana. We learned last week that she sells the marijuana to his connection. So she sold the marijuana to the dealer, the local dealer, and the dealer sold it to the kid. The kid got arrested. Okay, so she feels tied to the case. She feels an obligation there. Plus, it's the story she's working on. Okay, he's all but begging her to get him out of there. Um, so it's just heavy on the heart. At the same time, Davis shows up there on the farm. He's supposed to meet his wife, and him and the son come to pick up Charlie, and they're all still pretty standoffish as far as Davis goes. He hasn't had a real conversation with anybody in the family, so as far as we can tell. But he's talking to her, and he's making this. They're talking about police, how the police treat black people as opposed to other people, and he's saying that he understands totally the situation about this profiling type thing, and she is getting an attitude with him because she feels like he's a privileged person and he has no idea what it's like to be a black man. But it doesn't make any difference how much money he has. He's still a black man, and you can't assume that every cop you encounter is going to know about you being something more than just another black man. So he would understand that, and he feels persecuted at this point because the way he's being treated in this case, in this scandal where this girl's accusing him of rape. He feels that society is being unfair with him. So she goes off on him. Nova goes off on Charlie's husband, Davis, because she feels like he came there on a private jet and he has all the attorneys and he's able to pay somebody millions of dollars to keep the court case quiet. Although it's hardly quiet because everyone in the country knows about it apparently. So anyway, they have that encounter. Okay, so she does something that we suspect is not. We don't know about the end of the episode, but she withdraws at the very end of the episode. But Nova withdraws $10,000 from the farm's account, which even though they're all signed, they all have access to that money. The money is actually Charlie's. Charlie's put out over $100,000 in there for the running of the farm, plus about all this other stuff, which is like over I think it was something like $300,000 he put into equipment. But so towards the very end of this episode, she withdraws that money to use it to bail out this kid. $10,000. I just know that because they're showing us previews of next week. So okay, so there's Nova, Ralph Angel, poor Ralph Angel. Okay, first time we see Ralph Angel, he's got money. He gives somebody some money to do something, and his aunt Vi sees the money. Said, "Where you get all that money?" And he just says, "I'm a working man. You know, I guess if you just get paid, you cash your check, you would have money." But the writers have made it point out that he has money in his pockets. As we remember last week, he had been approached by this guy who had already ripped him off for $15,000 by leading them on, turning them onto this deal, which was bogus, selling them bad sea cane. He got involved with the same person stealing merchandise from this company, things they would order for the company, but they actually would take it and sell it. So he's involved in that way with the same asshole who ripped him off in the first place. Okay. So he said at first he sold a few phones. I guess he ordered a lot of phones at the company, and he sold them. That's why he has money. All right. So he tells the guy at work that he has a lot on the line because if he messes up and goes back to prison, he's already on parole. That he's going to blow this farm. He's going to blow his relationship with his son. He's going to be locked up again, and they could lose this farm based on him getting involved in something, some of this petty kind of stuff he's getting involved in. So he tells the guy at the job. I'll just call him the crook. I don't remember his name, the Spanish guy. He's the one that got him involved in stealing this merchandise and so forth. Well, when he goes tells him that he's had enough, he's not gonna do it anymore. The guy attacks him and he says that he is going to do what they tell him to do, and he was going to store the stolen hot goods on the farm. So Charlie resists that. He says he's not going to do it, and he jumps on him, and then soon about five guys jump to four guys jump Ralph Angel on the job, and they're going uh, to make him continue to do this scam they got going. Well, I think my camera's kind of got to move it up a little bit. The supervisor there walks up on the situation where they're beating him up, and he tells the supervisor. The supervisor breaks the fight up. Uh, Ralph Angel tells the supervisor, I'm not working with these dudes no more. I refuse to work with them." And Ralph Angel says, "And so I need you to lay me off." And so the supervisor says, I'm not laying you off. You're fired. Just get out. And I'll be sure that I'll tell your parole officer about that. So Ralph Angel plays a hand. He plays his hand. He's not totally stupid. And he says, I'm sure my parole officer would be interested in how you're treating, your personal scam, where you're making these guys work 40 hours and only paying them for 32 hours. So obviously the supervisor's stealing the money. So he threatens him with that. So the man just says, "Get out." I can assume that that means he's going to agree to lay him off. If he lays him off, it's not his fault, and he can go and work full time on the farm, and Charlie can just pay him a salary. That's the plan anyway. Okay. Okay. Meantime, there are already items in the shed. At some point, everyone's going to work on this crop, and Ralph Angel, I mean, Remy asks Ralph Angel for extra shovels. So he goes to get the shovels, and the shed where they keep them is locked. So Aunt Vi sees him unlocking the shed. She said, "I never knew that shed to be locked." I guess she lives there on the farm with them. She's always there, or she has some kind of home there on the property. Anyway, and he just gave her a flippant kind of answer, like, "Oh, you got to be careful around here, stealing, whatever." She didn't buy it. So they already introduced us to the idea that that shed is usually not locked. So what is going on is he's hiding stolen merchandise in the shed, and that plot will thicken in a couple minutes here. See, okay, all right. So a couple scenes later, there Ralph Angel's at home, his family. Cops show up at his door, two police officers, and they have a warrant to search the farm. And apparently, the job that he just left, things were missing, and they wanted to check all the employees' homes. So they search his house. uh, at some point, one of the cops looks out and sees a shed. He tells them to open the shed. So there's tension there. That the tension is behind the building. Ralph Angel gives him the key and turns his back and kind of looking up into the fields as if they're about to put the cuffs on him when they open that shed. They open the shed and there's nothing there. The merchandise is gone. So Aunt Vi has moved it. And she says she has dropped it in the pond or whatever, like body of water there. So she saves that ass. Um, right. I got rid of the. Hold on a minute. Okay, so what's next? Charlie. Let's talk about Charlie. All right, Charlie's is flirting very heavily with Remy. Now, the writers are not going to give us two men in one woman's life, particularly not a woman like Charlie. So when she is still flirting with him and they're still liking each other and he's kind of helping her on the farm and giving her all the information and not even charging her for information, it tells me that a relationship is stirring there. And so anyway, she's spending a lot of time with Remy. He's helping her out on the farm. He's not charging her. Uh, but he's suggested because now they remember that seed cane was bad. They couldn't plant it. So now the farm's in a little bit of a dilemma. They could either go across state lines and buy seed cane, but and it'd be very expensive and maybe not enough. So he says there's another alternative, that there's a seed cane that he has designed. I mean, I don't know anything about farm life, so whatever it means to design the seed to plant for sugar cane, he has his own formula. And she says, "What? It sounds expensive." He says, "No, I won't charge you anything. I want somebody to just give me a chance to try out my product." So she says, "Sure." I get the impression he likes helping her. So that settles the seed cane problem. They're going to use some type of formula or some designer seed cane that he has created. He's not charging her. Okay. Uh, when Nova was on on that radio show in the opening, and they kept bothering her and asking her these questions about her sister Charlie and her husband's situation, and Nova is resisting. At one point, she does mention that, well, people are always blaming the victim, the woman who was being raped, instead of accepting her story. And that sort of sounds like she's saying that perhaps that this girl was innocent and that she was raped and she was a victim. And that would tie into her sister's case. So Charlie is very upset. She's very mad with Nova because she walks in and Aunt Vi is listening to that radio station. So she hears her say that. She just gets a little snippet of what she's talking about. It's taken out of context, but she hears it. So they are now on speaking terms. Uh, Nova comes into the building, tries to go and hold her sister or hug her, and she snubs her. There's bad blood between them. Mhm. Okay, so Charlie's thing is now they've made this agreement with this hooker, this working girl, that they're going to pay her $3 million. But the girl, so she goes to meet with the girl and her husband. The girl is insisting on this meeting. So the girl lays out the story. Now, I have problems with the story because when he met her, she was doing gangbangs. She's a prostitute, and she was doing these parties when he met her. But they started. She lays out the whole story in this meeting with Charlie sitting there in the lawyer's office. Uh, and partly the way it worked was he met her in one of these gangbang type situations. Then they started seeing each other. Now she's a prostitute, so I assume that he was paying her all this time. But she felt like they had more than just a trick girl type of relationship. Uh, she had been seeing him for 3 years. There was a party after some game, and he got a call about his son Micah was sick, so he had to leave the party. So I guess now she had sex with him because she ended up in the shower in the hotel room. So while she's in the shower, he has to leave for family emergency. And apparently he told the men that they can go ahead and do the thing with her. So when she came out of the shower, they were waiting on her, and they all raped her. And I guess there was two at first, and then four more came, and they what she calls raped her. Now, I'm not going to get into trying to defend those actions or anything like that, but she said that she does parties. That's how he met her. She does these gangbang parties kind of thing. And so if he left and he said, well, and he gave her money before he left, and then she did what she always does. She calls it that rape because she wasn't aware of that was what was going to go down. I don't know why she would be in a hotel room with all these men after a party and be having sex. I think that was not supposed to happen. Was they supposed to just sit around and wait and watch? So I don't know. I'm not very clear on that. I don't think the situation is worth $3 million. That's just the thing I have. Not when that's how you're making your living. Is by doing not only just because you're a prostitute. You can't. I'm not saying you can't be raped because you're a prostitute, but because that's the kind of prostitution that you do. You do parties. I mean, you do gangbangs. Is where you get your reputation. So anyway, he told him, "Go ahead, have your way." Apparently, she didn't. She didn't want it, but she couldn't stop it. And this is what she's so angry about. Now, these guys must make an awful lot of money. That, like Andre Vi says, that is one expensive piece of ass. But they've agreed to pay her $3 million, and then deal with this humiliation of him telling the woman, "If I gave you $3 million, I'm gonna tell you shit. There don't be no meetings." So that just seems unfair to me. That whole situation. I mean, I know it's just fiction, it's television, whatever, but I mean, you had numbers that were reasonable. Like, okay, we're gonna pay you $50,000 to keep your mouth shut. I can see that. Or if it's a woman who had nothing to do with prostitution, and something like that happened to her, I could see a big number. But the way that this case is laid out, I just don't see her being able to manipulate it that way, that much. But anyway, they gave her a check for $3 million. She tells the story, and at the end of the scene, Charlie, at the end of the scene, you can see her face. She's really going through it as she's hearing this whole story about, because the woman, the girl, he's denying it, of course, uh, uh, Davis, in this meeting. But he called her at some point after the thing happened, and she recorded the whole conversation. And when she played the conversation back to this group, they were there, Charlie and Davis and the two lawyers and her. He was like calling her bitches and hoes, "Go get your money, bitch," and "I just pay you to do things my wife won't do." And he was kind of being like a person that Charlie wasn't even aware of. He's got a nasty side, I guess, when he's talking to hookers. So he was talking to her like she was a hooker. Charlie took offense to that. At the end of that meeting, they leave. The deal is done, and she tells him, "I'm done." So she has left her husband in the break room. That's how all that ends. Okay. Now let me make sure I got all my people here. Okay, so we know Nova is flirting with this woman now. We know Ralph Angel is narrowly escaped this deal with this stolen merchandise in his garage. They never did deal with Ralph Angel. On the very first episode, he had robbed his store, and the woman had said, "I saw your face." So I would think, but by now, we would have that would have come to some kind of fruition, where she would have identified him. So he may have other legal problems in the wings. But that's how the story ended. Basically, they're breaking up. All right, so maybe this is a little bit shorter review kind of thing, and recap. But I did enjoy this episode. I enjoyed the whole series. I would encourage you guys to check it out. And I'll talk to you next week.